Are you a high-performing parent, entrepreneur, or high achiever in pursuit of excellence? Welcome to The Nexus Podcast, a podcast custom tailored for families like ours, driven, affluent, and eager to lead extraordinary lives. From rockstar stay-at-home moms to high-producing CEOs, we choose to model success for everyone we are surrounded by. We prioritize health over sickness, embrace a vitalistic lifestyle, and seek to tap into the limitless potential that God has bestowed upon us. I'm Dr. Daniel Kimbley, your host, and on this podcast, we'll uncover the secrets to living a fulfilling and abundant life, where you and your loved ones can thrive physically, mentally, and spiritually. Together, we'll forge a path to greatness and unleash your God-given capabilities. Get ready to say yes to a life of true prosperity and well-being. This is The Nexus Podcast. Hey, what's up, fam? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. And I am so excited to bring you this episode for a number of reasons, but the biggest reason is because I talk about this literally every day in practice. And I've been trying to think about all right, how can we better support the people that we take care of inside of our office? Because there's one thing that I continually bring up to people, and I feel like it's the most confusing concept ever. And I want to try to just bring some clarity around it here on the podcast, more so for me to talk it out than anything, but maybe it will help you elevate and uplift your life. And so one of the questions that comes up often is like, hey, I was doing so good and then all of a sudden my neck started bothering me. Or I was doing so good and then all of a sudden my low back, I was just picking up groceries out of the car and my low back went out. Or my ribs went out. Or my neck went out. Or I have a pinched nerve or whatever it is. And every single day inside of my office, I have this same conversation with people. And I always ask them, do you have more stress? And generally speaking, the answer to that question is, well, yeah, right now there's some other stuff going on. But the reason I want to bring this up is because when we have more stress, our bodies are going to release more stress hormones. And another way to say that would be like this, is like anytime we have fear, our body is going to release stress hormones. Now, it doesn't matter, like you may be thinking fear of like someone's going to attack you or this like insane worry, but a lot of times our fears are like, oh my gosh, I have to make sure I pay this bill, or oh my gosh, I hope that these clients don't cancel on me, or I have so many things to do, I don't know how I'm gonna get it all done today. And like there's all these fears and all these worries and all these doubts and all these agreements that we make that are emotions. And those negative emotions, they could all come back. It could be fear, it could be shame, it could be guilt, it could be worry, it could be doubt, it could be anxiety. Like all of those things are really founded in fear. And it's worry that something isn't going to go the way that you want it to, because ultimately you probably are trying to be more in control of your life instead of like God being in control of your life. And so, you know, really quick, this may sound silly for some of you, but like there's really only two emotions in the Bible that the Bible talks about. And there's the emotion of love, which would stem from that like joy and other things, or there's fear. And that would be the worry, that would be the doubt, that would be the insecurity, etc. And so there's only two real emotions, and that all the other emotions stem from either love and trust or fear. And so I bring this up because what I did is I literally just went on Google. You can do this for yourself. It's the easiest thing to do. And I love AI now because it literally breaks it down and it can give you like studies and all this stuff, and it happens so quickly. And I just asked Google, I'm literally like, okay, how does worry about the future affect our physiology? So like, oh my gosh, I have to get all this stuff done. Oh my gosh, I have that deadline. Oh my gosh, I'm getting married in 3 weeks, which is like the most beautiful thing, right? Worry about the future wrecks our physiology. So here's what's happened. And I'm going to walk you through the steps in the process, and then I'm going to back up and tell you how chiropractic care can help you overcome all this. I'm going to tell you why when people have more stress, their pain shows up again, or things will show up that they're like unexplainable. Like, I don't know, I must have just slept funny. You didn't sleep funny, you have more stress. Like 9 times out of 10, you did not sleep funny. You weren't just getting the groceries out of the car. You have more stress, and that was your body's way of too much, and your body just said, hey, I need you to stop. Because the pain signal there is to tell you to stop doing something. The problem is most of the things that we do are inside of our own heads. It's not physically that we're doing that tells our body to stop. There are exceptions to this for sure, but for the most part, I'm telling you 95% of what I see inside of my office, if people could understand this principle, we could literally hack our own neurology to allow ourselves a better, higher expression of life. And so here's what happens. Anytime we worry about the future, it doesn't matter what the worry is about. Worried about picking up my daughter today, worried about if my mom's good today, worried about if my paycheck's gonna come on Friday, like whatever the worry is, worried about my wedding and making sure all the details of my wedding get done, worried about packing for the trip that I'm going on. Some of these things are beautiful things, yet worry causes a stress response. So the first thing that happens, worry, affects our physiology like this. It allows our body to release stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. I'll talk about those in a second, but I just want to go through. Those stress hormones, because of the way that the stress hormones affect the brain, which I'll talk about in a minute, it increases muscle tension. And right here, it literally says, which will cause aches and pains, particularly in the shoulders and back. And so the reason that this matters is because so many times people have these aches and pains and weird things that are unexplainable, and they're like, oh, I just slept funny, or it must have been from getting my groceries out of the car. And I'm like, dude, you get your groceries out of the car every single week and you've never had an issue before. Now all of a sudden it becomes an issue. It's an issue because there was more stress than the body could handle, so the body trips a stress response because so many stress hormones are getting released. And I'll talk about how stress hormones affect the brain in just a second. Can create digestive issues. It can create sleep disturbances. Again, Google this for yourself. You will literally see, and you can see the research that's associated with worrying about the future. It can create sleep disturbances. So, I'll circle back and explain each one of those in more detail. It can result in immune system dysfunction. So our immune system not working properly, which means we could get sick more. Long term, it can lead to autoimmune issues, etc. And then cognitive impairment. So the way that our brain actually thinks and the way that we think about the world and think about life. So I want to run through these because I think it's very, very important to do so. And so when we talk about muscle tension, here's what happens. Here's what's so interesting. Anytime our body releases stress hormones, it's going to fire to the frontal cortex of the brain. Cortisol specifically turns off the frontal cortex of the brain. The frontal cortex of your brain is your part of your brain that's responsible for good decision making. It's responsible for behavioral regulation. It's responsible for your empathy. It's responsible for your emotional intelligence. It's responsible for your creativity. It's responsible for your digestion. It's responsible for putting you in a good, tall posture. So if your stress hormones release when you worry about the future, again, this is just a thought in your head. If your stress hormones release when you worry about the future, it's going to put your body into a protective fight or flight state because the stress hormones want us to fight or run away. We don't fight or run away like this. We fight or run away in this posture with our shoulders forward flex, with our hip flexors tighter. And so many people who have chronic muscle tension, I store all my stress in my shoulders. I store all my stress in my hip flexors. Yeah, because you chronically stress yourself out with worrying about the future. And so I'm going to give you the hack for this in a second. So muscle tension. When we worry about the future, when we have fear at all, it doesn't matter where it comes from, that fear will literally trigger stress response in our body. Those stress hormones weaken the front part of our brain. The front part of our brain is responsible for good posture. If we have poor posture, our muscles are going to get tighter in ways that they shouldn't be, and this will create pain. Simple. The front part of the brain is also responsible for turning off and on the pain signal in the first place. Pain doesn't happen here. Pain happens as a chemical reaction in your brain, and then it gets sent down to the place where your body wants to experience pain, or where your brain wants your body to experience pain. So again, this is always about the brain, not about where the pain is in the first place. So the stress response, the stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, can also cause digestive issues. When we release our stress hormones, we literally turn off blood flow to the gut. Why would we do this? Because in stress, in fight or flight, if we need to fight or run away from something, we're going to pull blood out of the digestive system, and we're going to take that blood and we're going to put it in the big muscles so we have more oxygen and we have more energy to fight or run away. So it's a totally brilliant design that God gave us to keep us safe and protected if we needed to fight or run away from something. But the problem is the bear that you need to fight or run away from is actually the thoughts that a lot of us think about worrying about the future, or about fear, or about negative stuff. And this can come from the news, it can come from social media, it can come from comparison to others. Like all these places that we're literally triggering stress responses inside of our bodies that are keeping us from healing the way that we were designed to. If we get into sleep disturbance, adrenaline and norepinephrine literally keep us awake. Part of the responsibility of adrenaline and norepinephrine is to turn off and act on the front part of the brain to keep you alert so that you look for the next scary thing. So no wonder people who are chronically stressed out and stressing themselves out with their worry and with their anxiety and their fear and their insecurity and their doubts about the world and the way that God could show up up for them inside of their lives, it's no wonder then that their sleep would be affected. It's because their hormones are doing exactly what they were designed to do if a bear or a lion or a saber-toothed tiger was coming to attack them in the woods. Those are the fight or flight, the stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, released when we worry. And oftentimes it's our thoughts that create the worry, nothing else in our external world. It's just the thoughts that we think. Immune system dysfunction. So what this says on Google is like long-term stress from excessive worry may weaken the immune system, making you more susceptible to illness. We know that cortisol is a stress hormone. Cortisol puts sugar in the bloodstream. If we put sugar in the bloodstream, we're going to pause our immune function so that we can fight or run away, and then we'll increase our immune function later once we get the blood sugar taken care of. So anytime we have increased blood sugar, it's actually going to pause our immune system function. This is important because a lot of times what we see is people who are chronically stressed out. One, what will happen is they start getting sick all the time, and then they get diagnosed with some kind of autoimmune issue later where the body starts attacking itself because the immune system is so weakened and so overactive at the same time, if that makes sense. I know it sounds like an oxymoron. And then lastly, cognitive impairment. Fear and worry can impact the way that we think, making it harder to focus, concentrate, and make decisions. Cortisol acts on the frontal cortex of the brain to turn it off. We don't need to make good decisions if I need to fight a bear if I'm a caveman. It's not a good decision to make because the likelihood that I get hurt is very, very high, but it might keep my family safe and protected, so I'm willing to make an irrational decision. How many people do you know that just make dumb decisions all the time and you're like, dude, no matter how much I tell you, you just don't listen? It's because literally their brain is functioning less than, and my guess would be if we go back to what I was talking about with muscle tension, they probably have poor posture too, because posture is an indicator of brain function. So why do I share this with you? It's because so many people that I see inside of my office, they lay down and they're like, I must have slept funny last night, my back's all twisted up, whatever it is. And my first question to them every time is, do you have more stress? It does not matter where the stress comes from. It could be financially, it could be relationally, it could be spiritually, it could be worry about your kid who's just going to college. It could be like, there's a million places that worry and fear happen from inside of our lives. And what I know is that when I see people worry inside of our office, their body will start to express symptoms because the pain and the aches and the tightness and the digestive issues and the sleep issues and the brain fog and the immune system stuff, all of it comes from a lack of the body being able to be in a rest and digest state. It's more of a fight or flight state. And so here's what's so interesting though. If we don't fight or run away every time we worry inside of our own head, our brain is going to trigger more stress hormones to keep us locked in this fight or flight state. And if we don't fight or run away, the brain goes, okay, I'm just going to stay in this fight or flight state even more. So it's a feedback loop, and that feedback loop is what keeps people stuck. So often what happens is when we start adjusting people, they're like, oh my gosh, my digestion got way better after one adjustment. My neck doesn't feel as tight anymore. How come I'm feeling all this clicking and cracking in my neck that I haven't noticed for the last 15 years? It's because your body's starting to break up scar tissue and your body's actually allowing your spine to move the way it was designed to again. Because when we move joints of the spine, we wake up the brain. When we wake up the brain, the frontal cortex starts to work, and it can start to turn off that flood of stress hormones that are happening in the system. This is why people sleep better. This is why people make better decisions. How many times I've seen people make more money. How many times I've seen dad who have never once taken their kids to school start to volunteer to take their kids to school. How many times I've seen moms who are like, I'm like uncontrollably yelling at my kids. I'm not doing that anymore. It's insane. And it's not because I'm the best doctor. It's because what we understand about the brain and what we understand about physiology is that when we get joints of the spine moving well and we create balance within your brain, your body will turn off the flood of stress hormones so that your body can go back into a rest and digest state. And if we have too many fearful, worryful thoughts, that will create stress inside of our system. And when it creates stress inside of our system, we will get the muscle tension, we will get the sleep issues, we will get the pain, etc. And this is why I'm sharing this with you, is because it's so important to understand is like a lot of times your pain and where you think it's coming from is not actually where it's coming from. It's not a neck issue, it's a stress issue. It's not a back issue, it's a stress issue. It's not a disc degeneration issue, it's a stress issue. It's not a pain issue, it's a brain issue. And when we can address your brain and we can get somebody to be aware that, oh my gosh, I'm actually just more stressed out, and they stop telling themselves the story that they're broken, that turns off the stress response even further. Every time I speak the words I'm broken, or there's something wrong with me, or my back is jacked up, or my neck is jacked up, or I'm in so much pain, or my body's a wreck, or my body's a disaster, all of those things are fearful comments, fearful thoughts, fearful agreements that, guess what they do? They trigger a stress response in the system. And what I say about the stress response, stress hormones Increase muscle tension. Increased muscle tension creates more pain. And so, it's obvious that if we change the words that we speak and we understand that our bodies are not actually broken, but in times of more stress, we're going to have pain, because pain is there as a way to get our body to stop and rest and relax and recover. That's why the pain signal is there in the first place for 95% of the people that we work with. Yes, there are exceptions to this. This is why we do thorough exam on every person that we take care of, and we don't just lay people down and start pushing down the high spots. So there's a very specific approach that we take in our office where we can address brain and the balance from left side to the right side. That's what we're all about in our office. If you're interested in learning more, here's what I would encourage you to do. You can either, in the show notes of this, you can ask us questions, you can text us directly, we'll get back to you with those questions. There's also a link to our documentary. It's a full-length documentary. It explains this in detail and exactly how we work inside of our office with some amazing case studies, which I also shared with you last week. If you have questions, let us know. Don't hesitate to reach out. I hope you'll check out the documentary. It's entirely free. It explains exactly what we do, and I can guarantee you that there's more inside of your life that you're missing if you're not already addressing your brain health. And you do that, the most important way that I know is through brain-based chiropractic care. My friends, I love you. I hope you got some value out of this, and I will come at you again next week. Peace.